All right, here we go. Let's set out this tweet. Lunch menu canceled. I'm going to Twitch reviewing a few open source pull requests to show what that process is like. Tweet. So it's a really last second one in the middle of the day, so I'm guessing there's not going to be a lot of people joining, but I'm just going to get going. All right, so here's what I'm doing. I am reviewing a couple open source pull requests that came in on the 3 Minute Geek Show website. And so here's what it looks like right now. It's basically, it's a platform that I'm kind of eventually building to consume an RSS feed and turn it into a list page for all your episodes. And then you click on an individual episode and it gives you an individual page for this. So as you can see, we've got discuss comments down here. And the link goes through to the briefs page, and because that's the briefs is what's powering it, and then it's got the comment count, auto embedded with JavaScript and a little kind of what is this introduction thing here. So I got a couple pull requests, so I figured I would go review them and show folks what does it look like for me to review pull requests. Hey Six Labs, what does it look like for me to review a pull request that comes into one of my open source projects, to just show kind of folks what is on my mind, what things do I want from people from a pull request, and kind of what processes am I going through as I review them. So, all right, what do we have here? This is from John Sugar, a bit of static. So the audio is always a pain, so I'm really hoping that this does not end up continuing to be a problem. Does anybody other than B3ZMan41 having the audio 2 static going on for everybody? All right, I'm really praying that we're not going to waste the whole time fighting audio this time. I will try. I thought I was going to have it fixed. I will try one other mic real quick, and then y'all can let me know if it fixes it. Oh, I do. There you go. Nice one. That's it. That's good. All right, thanks. Have a good one. This mic doesn't work. I don't actually know what we're gonna do. It's a not audio plug. It's a USB headset. So there's no wiggling. So we're gonna try this. Switch our audio settings, properties, and switch to the. Yeah, it's not picking it up. Yeah, I might actually have to turn off the stream and then start again, because right now it's using this USB microphone. We'll try one other audio setting, and if not, then I'm gonna stream and start it again. All right, is this any better for those of you who are having audio issues? I know it's going to take 15 seconds to update for everybody. Is it better now, Ben? Okay, cool. All right, let's get going. So what I'm doing is reviewing open source pull request. Hi, everybody who said hi. I'm reviewing an open source pull request to show folks what does it look like for me to review an open source pull request, and actually any pull request in general, but especially one of my open source projects. This is John Sugar who's making this request, who actually often joins these live streams. And he gave me permission to kind of dissect it on air. So we're going to do that. So first thing I see right now, ordered ID for the 3 Minute Geek Show. He's describing what the pull request is, and there's a nice kind of long description here of what we're doing. If it ends up being a thing that actually has visual changes, I would love to get a screenshot when somebody does that, but I don't know if it does yet. This is a quick spike to see if I could create a usable ordered ID for the 3 Minute Geek Show. The changes provide the following. Number 1, introduce an article mapper to make handling of the article data easier, since the RSS library makes adding our own fields to it difficult. Number 2, construct an article ID from the RSS pub date that can be used as an incrementing or order ID. And then 3, added a slug to the article object to make the URLs prettier. Okay, so if you haven't been following along, right now we're talking about this project, which consumes an RSS feed, just a normal RSS feed for a podcast, and it gives you a landing page, and it gives you an individual episode page. And right now what I did was I built it out to be just /18. And this is currently not based on a pub date or anything, but it's literally just based on iterating over the number of, I guess it basically sorts the RSS thing based on the order based on the pub date, and then it basically makes the first pub date 1, second pub date 2, and on and on and on from there. So let's see what changes he made. And I'm just going to kind of say out loud the things that I think. And they're not critical. Again, John Sugar knows that I'm going to be just totally 100% upfront about what's going on here. So, and I'll just say, like, you know, everything that I would think as I'm reviewing one of these. First thing, I don't care, drop that. So I make these changes myself, but I'm going to put the comments in line in a way that I would if this were a work pull request. I don't add editor config files, but maybe I should. So that's a good question. So no need for this. Namespace app HTTP. I'm pretty sure that app is normally capitalized in Laravel. So in these kind of contexts, what you'd probably end up wanting to do is look at the rest of the application and see what they use. Consistency is really helpful. And I try to be consistent with things like PSR2 so that you don't have to learn like my style. But when you don't have that luxury, you always want to look at the consistency with the rest of the rest of the project. So namespace capital A app, and then this one has namespace lowercase app. So so that's not pretty sure. App is normally capitalized, so please capitalize. And a lot of these things end up being so simple that I just do it myself. So again, I'm doing these right now just so that y'all can kind of see kind of what are the things that pop in my brain for this. Use carbon, use fine. Often people don't order these the same way. There's no standard for this, so just my personal preference is that they're ordered alphabetically based on the whole thing. Some people prefer length. I prefer alphabetical. Article mapper. Okay. So I don't do doc blocks most of the time, and I don't even know what internal param means. So I'm just going to say no doc blocks on this project. The only time I ever use doc blocks is when it's extremely unclear what was going to happen. And this is telling me what the param is, but it's a type-ended param, so I already know. It's telling me it's returning an array, and the first line literally says return array. And internal param, I literally have no idea what that means, so I'm not going to concern myself with it. No spaces inside of your... Oh, I should turn nitpick on for this. I can't turn it on in a way that y'all can see, because then you would see some projects that I can't open up. But I'm going to go to nitpick-ci.com. This is a project by Adam Wathen. I'm going to log in, and I'm going to go to Matt Stauffer /3 Minute Geek Show. I have to refresh my list because he caches your lists. And I'm going to turn on nitpick. And what nitpick does is every single time you get a new pull request in, it's going to sniff for PSR2 violations and manually comment on them in the pull request, which makes my life better because then I don't have to do what I'm going to do here, which is comment on this being a PSR2 violation. So no spaces within parens. Okay, so we've got a static function that takes an article and returns an array. So I already don't like this because I don't really like working with arrays. So I'm going to note that. Normally, I prefer to avoid working with associative arrays if at all possible. This might be a place for us to create a custom episode class that represents the same data in a more structured manner. All right, so what's he doing here? So here's another one. I don't do the... And so Bizman41, editor config. Does editor config allow you to define things like don't do this? Because if it does, I'd like that. So these are the types of things that are not defined by a PSR2, so it's a personal preference thing. So in general, just so you all know, when you're contributing open source, look at what the open source author does elsewhere in the project and be consistent with that. But I would love it if there's an editor config way to just say, don't do this. So I prefer not aligning, fat arrows with spaces. Yeah, I know what it is. I just have never cared enough about it to actually go look at which specific things you can and can't do. So I was just asking you specifically, is this one of them? I've had a lot of people ask about it over the years, and I've just never cared enough, to be honest, to really look into it. All right, so first thing he's doing here is he's basically taking an article from the default client, which is this VineLab RSS client, and he's mapping it into something that we want to do. So what is he changing? He's giving it a sort ID based on this is the best way if you're using a particular date. He's converting to carbon, formatting, which is what I've already done elsewhere where I'm sorting it. So now you can sort based on this, which is basically the date but formatted a particular way. The The title's the title. The slug is slugging the title. I don't think I want to use the slug, but let's just look at it and just see. Authors, the author descriptions, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this is basically just the running into the problem that he described running into, which is this VineLab RSS article class does not make it easy to add things that weren't in the original parsing. So he's really just basically creating an associative array that adds sort ID and then it adds slug. The sort ID I'm already operating in manually in the route, so that makes sense to add it explicitly here. And then the slug he's going to use in his pull request. Okay, so he's going to routes.php. So we have a conflict because since his pull request has come in, I have now moved all of these routes out to controller methods. So in order to merge this, which I won't be able to do on the call today, we would have to basically pull these changes he's making out into the controller methods. I prefer never using inline fully qualified class names. So please import. And then, oops, same comments as above. So you notice I'm spending a lot of time in code style. The problem is, and this is the whole reason nitpick exists, open source authors and project maintainers should not be putting their brain power towards tweaking, leaving comments in spaces, because I'm spending so much time commenting on code style that I'm not commenting on the actual functionality. And that's why Adam wrote nitpick, is because I was doing that all the time in Titan, and it was wasting time of the, basically one of the owners of the company to be commenting on people's code style. So rather, your code style should be perfect by the time it comes in, and you should get that by encouraging open source authors to use projects like nitpick, by looking at the code that they're writing and trying to match your code with their code style-wise so that they can just look at the code. I'm just going to say that so I don't have to keep saying comments about spacing. All right, so down here, we're getting a single episode. And what I'm doing is basically, this is my original code. I'm saying, give me all the articles, sort by the pub date, and then get the one that is the ID that was passed in -1, because it's a 0 index type thing. So if I passed in 5, I'd want to get the one that's actually the 4th index, because it's 0 indexed, but our episodes are 1 indexed. So he changed it, and he basically now just said, oh, this got out of sync. This is the one it's comparing against up here. Episodes. So when I did episodes, I just passed in feed articles. He's actually sorting it here, which makes me think that I had probably sorted it in my view in the original version. Yeah, definitely. Feed articles map. So yeah, so he's basically passing the article, and then so what he's doing is he's taking the feed articles and then he's iterating over them, and each one he's basically replacing the article from the VineLab, and he's replacing it with this mapped version of it. So again, that would be good, except for the fact that I don't want it to be an associative array. But in general, it's good. And now he can sort by this date, because he converted the sort. Well, actually, sort by description, sort by descending, sort date. He's sorting by this field sort date, but the field is named sort ID. I think that was a typo. So, and this brings up another thing. In general, you're going to want to have run any code and ensure that every single thing that you're doing does what you want. Now, to his credit, the best way to do that is tests, and I haven't written any tests for this application yet. So that's my fault. However, even if the original author is being a lazy behind like I am and not writing tests, it's a really fantastic way to contribute, is to write some tests for things, either the functionality that you're introducing or something else. But again, John Sugar, this may be his first open source pull request ever. I have no idea. So right now, I want to make it super clear. I'm just really thankful that he did this. It's really, really helpful and really cool for someone to do this. And it's not bad at all for somebody to do something that, this is an encouraging and growing thing that John is being really gracious by letting me do live, not a breaking down or criticizing thing. So cool. Yeah, my hope was that for someone to see what it looks like as a pull request receiver, so you can understand how to give better pull requests, because you can see what it's like as a receiver. So the GitHub kind of got lost here a little. This right here actually maps up to there. So here he's doing the same thing that I did, where you pull in the episode and then you map it, and then he was able to do sort ID. No, where sort ID, I think he got mixed up there, because right here, this is basically saying sort ID is equal to formatting it based on the year, month, day. But the thing is, you can't get an ID, like an integer ID, until you've looked at all of them and then ordered them. So I don't think that this thing right here works. I don't think this works until you iterate over all of them and assign them a unique ID. The other pull request is yours. Cool. Well, hopefully we're going to get through this one and be able to get to the next one next. So cool. And here he actually introduced spaces in these places, which I'm almost 100% sure that's happening because look right here. It's probably his Phpstorm default settings. So in Phpstorm, when you edit a file, will automatically apply its settings there. So again, I don't want that. So all right, he indented here. This is just a personal preference thing. I actually don't want it indented that way. I like it. I like my for each and the thing that's for eaching lined up with each other. But you can see I screwed up my end for each. So that was very unclear on my part. So it's totally fine for him to have done that. Totally makes sense. He's converting the access of this episode variable to be an array access because it's an array access thing. And he doesn't have to be doing math inline like I was doing because he purportedly assigned it as a thing. I think he was converting the sort ID and the sort date thing and kind of got lost midway, basically. Because sort ID is not an ID, it's a date. Yep, and then more things, array access. So I'm going to now leave him comments. I'm going to say, basically, I don't have to mention him. Thanks for this pull request. Because I've made typing's hard, some architectural changes. Hey Lee, doing well. How you doing? So I'm going to close and comment it because it would take more work. 120 something, I think, words per minute, but it's actually been a while since I've done it. Good to hear. So I close this because there's so many things that need to be cleaned up, and for him to take a whole bunch of time to go back and clean those up, and then update this pull request to work against the same the new architecture, it wouldn't even be worth his time. So it's possible after I review the next pull request, I just go and do this work against the written model's latest version, and then just mention his name so that it's clear that this was work that he's contributed. So that's our first one. Second one, configurable subscribe URLs. Let's take a look at what we got here. Hey Matt, I suggested this the other day on the Twitch chat, but it got quickly drowned. I decided to go ahead and make a PR because there's no better way for coders to explain code than using code. Quick summary is that the subscribe links, so the subscribe links we're talking about here are at the top of the first page. We've got subscribe, iTunes, Overcast, Podcast.app, RSS, View, and Briefs.fm. We're hard-coded and should come from the user configured value. Yep. It's a bit hacky using substring. Okay, already that's probably not how I want it to work, but let's keep looking, but it works. It's gross, and I would probably extract things to a class or function. I want the changes to be minimal. It would also be easier if the .env value did include the protocol or extension, but it's easier for the user to just copy-paste the whole thing. It's more valuable. Do whatever you will with this. Sorry for the lack of animated GIF in the PR. Maybe I should have included a cat or something clever. That is a reference to the fact that I asked people to put GIFs in their pull requests if at all possible. But apparently when I say that, people tend to think I mean like a silly GIF. I mean a GIF of the actual thing you're doing. So if you're introducing a pull request that has actual visual changes, do a GIF of that. And if you want to do a GIF of that, use something like LiceCap, which makes it very simple for you to create your own animated GIFs recording what's going on the screen. So I will use LiceCap to create a GIF of the actual functionality I'm doing a pull request of and pull it in the pull request. And if it's not an animated thing, do maybe a before and after screenshot. So the only time not to include one of those is if it's like a code only type thing, which looks like this one might be. All right, let's take a look. So we got a new environment variable called RSS URL. And so what this is proposing is basically all of these subscribe links are going to be in some way based on this RSS URL, which is probably true on my particular site. And look, what he did is basically iterated over the iTunes subscribe link, the Overcast subscribe link, the podcast subscribe link, the RSS subscribe link, and the individual link. And he noticed that they all have the same thing right here. They don't all have the http:// in front of it, right? So, he basically, did a little bit of stripping and ended up doing all these substers. It's an interesting start. I like it. We'll need to iterate over that. Yeah, no worries. And then a test. This is what I was talking about. Isn't this wonderful? Now, the problem is this needs to presume that this test will not work unless, I don't know why it's under features, but this test will not work because it's assuming that your .env is configured a particular way. So there is a way to get around that. Hi, Mask3. But let's talk about it. So here, let's talk about first steps. I like this idea of introducing the RSS URL. So here's something that I've actually done in this application. Let's pull it up and look at this. So in the views, I've come up with this customize folder. I've been trying to figure out exactly how it is that I'm going to allow people to customize this. So I've been trying to set up as much as possible to make it all customizable in the env file. So RSS URL here is actually already here. Discuss short name, Twitter handle, Twitter card image, all this kind of stuff is already in here, right? So even background color. My hope is that as much as possible can just be configured there. But I was very curious about how are people to configure more view-related stuff. So right now, the simplest thing I did was I just extracted all the view partials that I think people might want to customize into this customize folder to give me like of course that's not enough, because, so imagine you did a website based on the 3 Minute Geek Show, and you cloned it. I made it like I gave it a clever landing page type name, yourpodcast.io or whatever, and you cloned it, and then you customized your settings, and then you went and you customized what is this.blade.php, right? Your what is this section should not be the same as my what is this section. So you customize it, and then later you want to pull down the latest update. Well, this will break it. And so there's the most likely idea I have right now is any file that exists in the customized folder will basically be in vendor. It will be published to a folder where you can edit it. And then, so all the other files will update, but these particular files won't update. That's been kind of my gut. So when you go to links, this is what links looks like right now. It's assuming that this is going to be the type of thing you're going to customize, because who knows, you might want other stuff up here. So what he's introduced that's new is the idea of, rather than this being customizable, make them stuck with this particular set of links and then basically programmatically generate those links based on this RSS URL. So, oh, interestingly, it would work in your test because you added it to the phpunit.xml. I was just about to teach how to do that. So if you want an environment variable to be consistent in your tests, you will go add it as an environment variable here. And so basically, you ensure that his tests run correctly by putting it in here. Okay, notes. One thing I started doing is keeping all environment calls and config files nowhere else in the code. The remainder of the app then use config files. I completely agree. That's our policy at Titan, and you can actually see a few commits back. I moved moved routes to controllers, RSS to service provider, and env to config. And live code review. Ryan Tablada may be here right now, and he asked for a live code review of his JavaScript framework, which sounds actually awesome and lots of fun. Okay, back here. So in this particular pull request, you'll notice first of all I moved the routes out to controllers. And then I moved the binding of this RSS out of happening in every single route, because here you can see I was generating this feed in every route, and now I moved it out to a service provider. I tried to cache it, but you can't cache simple XML, whatever it's called in PHP, out of the bat, and that's what this VineLab RSS provider uses. So I need to basically put a wrapper around it so that I can cache the wrapper, which is sad. And then I moved all these env calls into config. And again, the same thing. I moved it into their own config, which I called customize. It's kind of a weird way to do it, but I did that for the sake of easily identifying for me what are the things that I'm going to want users to config and which are the ones I want. And then I just changed all the inline env calls to be config calls. So I had them inline because I was being lazy, but eventually I said, you know what, this is something I want to clean up. All right, so now we're reviewing this. So the question that I would have to answer before I decided whether or not to merge this pull request is, do I want to A, make it normal for people to customize this links, Or B, do I want to make it normal for them to have the exact same set of links that are programmatically generated based on this RSS URL variable? I'm not sure. I'll have to think about it. But this is a fantastic pull request. It keeps my code style. It introduces the first test in the code base, which I love. It makes sense. This whole having to do the substir multiple times, it means that I would probably want to normalize it out. I'm trying to. But you notice that one time you're not substringing it, one time you're substringing it, two times you're doing it this way, and then another time you're cutting off. So it's kind of this whole like, we probably introduce some simple service or some processing prior to the view to do these things. But in general, it's really great. So I just need to make some decisions about how I want it customizable. So I'm just going to say thanks. And even though Javier Dev is watching right now, I'm going to leave it here so it's publicly available, because putting in code and pull request to open source is like you're putting your work in, so I want it to be valuable for you. So I'm hoping at least one thing is the author of a pull request, or the author of the library that you're pull requesting to, leaving positive feedback can hopefully be good for you. So saying thanks so much for this. I'm not 100% sure this is how I want it to work. I'll think about it. But either way, this is a great PR. Thank you so much for your time. So regardless of whether or not I end up merging in the end, this, parse URL, okay, cool. Hobby Dev now has this kind of on his record saying, yeah, I do open source work, and it was well reviewed and that kind of stuff. And so that's my way of basically saying thank you for that, right? Okay, so we have not 18 minutes left because I got to eat my lunch before 1. 10 minutes. What can we do in 10 minutes? Let's see if in 10 minutes we can do a little bit of that same work. So remember, the first pull request was John Sugar introducing this idea, which is a very good idea. And I made some criticisms, hopefully positive, of some pieces of it. But in the end, I really like this idea, which is basically mapping. Thank you for your pull request. Is mapping over all of the things. So let's go into our controllers. We're mapping over all of them. So when we pass in a list of episodes, we're not getting the direct VineLab RSS article, but instead we're getting our own custom class. All right, Ryan Tablada, what does your framework look like? Give me a link. All of them. Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm slow. You can see I'm like, I'm working on it. While he gives me that link, because it's going to take him at least 15 seconds, what I think I would probably end up doing is the early janky version would be basically something like episodes equals, and then I'd probably create my own episode class. Episode. And I probably actually, for a single episode, I'd probably do this. I'd probably say episode equals app episode, from RSS or something like that, and then I'd pass in the RSS episode, and then that'd be the case. And so for the list of episodes, it'd probably end up being the same thing. So it'd basically be feed articles map. Oops. And then return that same thing. Oops. So basically, this is episodes equals. Oops. Typing when people are watching you is just stressful, man. So we basically now said episodes equals feed articles map article. So basically, for each of the articles coming out of this feed, give me an article, and then I'll map it into this. This is called a named constructor. It's basically saying, give me a new instance of this from this specific context. And then this is saying, give me a single one from this specific context. Now, if we do this, we probably won't need to do this. Well, no, we might still need to do that. So I'll probably want to extract this out somewhere as a lookup article by, whatever. So this clearly won't work, but we would end up creating an app episode.php. Oh, save this. App episode. I'll get to that in just a second, Ryan. .php, and then you create your class here. And it would have to at least have a public static function from RSS, and then this would be article, and then we would do our mapping in here. Now you can do mapping in different places. You can use a mapper like he did in his pull request, but right now that's what I would do. And so I'll basically turn it into what I want here. Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you. This is Laravel. However confused idea of him. I don't use. I use the vintage mode in Phpstorm. Phpstorm is just too slow for me, and so in the end, I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. If Phpstorm speeds up, I'll jump back into it because I love a lot of the features that PHP offers. If you're interested in kind of learning my thoughts about that, you go to Sublime Text PHP. This is when I switched to away, because I love Phpstorm, but I wanted the speed of Sublime Text, so I wrote this big blog post about how to basically get the things that were my must-haves for Phpstorm in Sublime Text, and now I'm switching over to Vim, and I'm slowly doing, basically probably going to end up writing the same article for Vim. So, just full of goodies. Yeah, you are. All right, cool. So, yeah, Phpstorm is just too slow. All right, so let's take a look. So if you don't know Ryan Tablada is a wonderful, wonderful human being. And he does a lot of work in Ember now. He's very handsome and works at Iron Yard and used to do a lot of work on Laravel. And so this is his, he's creating a framework. And so he's just showed me 2 links for this framework. I've never seen this before. Did he give any notes there? He said no ORM yet, but the binding is pretty quick and easy considering Node, I think is what he's saying. So you can see this is source actions users index and source actions users show. So this is clearly an example app that he's creating using his framework. My guess from that is that his framework is name driven, but I don't actually know. ES 2016. I haven't written a lot of ES 2016 to be honest. I've read it every once in a while, so I kind of would like to. So I know that this means import the JSON API support action from your decorators. And then there's some high-level action class, which I'm assuming is the definition of like basically what I would think of as a route. I don't know what this is, but my guess is that this is defining like an entity, because we can see that the index page passes, they're both users, right? So this is probably defining what particular entity we're working with right now. But the index page is defining it's the collection, which probably makes some changes to how the routing works. It probably makes it so that you're expecting a list, whereas in this one you're expecting an individual ID. Simplified promise-aware hook for finding data. Return any POJO or promise of data. POJO is plain old JavaScript object, just like Popo is plain old PHP object. So he runs on this data thing, which is some kind of, it's the method it's available in, on the class. The action class must have a data method available, and this is the data that should be returned. And then it's looking up in the database, I guess, and it's selecting these 2 things. So my guess from this would be that this would be, well, okay, so JSON API, okay, yeah. So it's basically making it easy to export all these things as a JSON API. And if y'all have not looked at JSON API, it's a really fantastic specification for building your RESTful JSON APIs so that you don't have to always ask the questions of, well, is the data versus the metadata going to be embedded somewhere? And how do I pass along, what type of data it is, or the reference links, or if there's something we're, embedding, what does the embedding the shape of the embedding look like, whatever. So this is just basically people who've made those decisions for you, so you don't have to make them all the time. So I've got to go. I want to show one more thing, my other thing, but this is ridiculously clean. This is like, if this is what it's taking, now you said you don't have the ORM yet, so I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm assuming that's going to look in here, but my guess is at least somewhere here you're basically saying my database component, go to the users table and get all of them and select these 2 rows. And so my guess is that if I were to go to, driven scratchpad /.com/API/users, all I would need to do is write this code, and now all of a sudden I'm going to get every single user's email and ID basically in a nice JSON API wrapper. That's crazy. That's just nuts. So that's super exciting. And then here I would get that same thing, but scoped down to just the query parameter ID. Now, REST.params, if it's an ID like in a traditional RESTful thing, so it's like /API/ what, I don't know what I'm writing out. It's /API/users/1 versus, that would be a little confusing, because when I would think of params, I think of query params. I think of the segments as maybe not being params, so if it's a segment, I'd be a little confused. But in general, it looks cool. I like it. I want to hear more about it. All right, last thing. Did you? I expect you to teach me more Vim now that you're here. Let's pull this back up. Okay, so we've got this episode. It's going to be namespace app. Sorry for the context switching, everybody. I hope you can follow well. And so what we're basically expecting is we're expecting an article here that has certain things. So we can actually look to John Sugar's pull request here and look at his mapper and see this mapper is basically like our first step of kind of inspiration for what mapping this thing is going to look like. So let's just take a look at this. So of course we're not going to return an array, but this is kind of the mapping that he was doing, right? So he basically just took all these places where you've got like this rudimentary stuff, and he's doing that. So first thing is, I don't need the original pub date, I don't think. At least I can't think about it. So I would probably end up wanting, and let's actually just define our properties, right? We don't necessarily have to. I'm trying to figure out whether I want to do like magic getters and setters or if I just do public. Let's just do public for now. So what do we want? Well, we want an ID, which we're going to make up. We want a title. Now, interestingly, it's going to be tough to get an ID without having knowledge of the entire episode list. So that's something we're going to have to answer, is how exactly do we do that? Awesome. Ryan, let me know when you're going to be streaming. I would definitely love to see that. So we're going to have a title. I don't have a use for the slug right now, so I'm going to skip it. But what he was suggesting is basically you could do 3minutegeekshow.com/14/ the slug here. That's okay. The main thing is, I guess, you know what, you can do that. I don't want you to have to know that. I want you to be able to type this. But one thing you could do is just say, it's available at 3minutegeekshow.com/14, but the moment they hit that, it redirects them to this. That's okay. So let's do that. What the heck? Why not? Public slug. Whoa, what happened? Public author, public description, public link, public category. And you might be looking at this being like, well, why are you doing these all, why are you writing all this out manually? I like to be very explicit when I can about the code that I'm writing. Our desire to be kind of really clever, I don't know what enclosure is, so I'm not going to worry about it right now, often leads us to write less clear stuff. And so, but I am not going to require 9 individual things in the constructor. So, and one thing you can actually do when you're doing name constructors like that, you can actually have a private constructor if you want. So let's just try that out and see what we see. So what I'm going to expect here is there's going to be an array of attributes that has to have all those. And you can do validation if you want to ensure it has all of them. Or you can just say, for each attributes as key value, this key equals value. That's basically your basic thing. I'm not sure if that's what we're going to end up doing. Thanks, Mike Browner. See you later. SEO framework is like, yeah. Ryan, yeah, just let me know, man. So essentially what we end up wanting to do is you want to say return new static with this mapping that we're going to do here. And that's how you do one of these these name constructors. Because this is static, right? So it needs to generate an instance of this. So what we're basically saying is return a new one of this. And so what is this right here? This is this attributes array. And so then at this point, we're going to generate this sort of array right here that John Sugar was doing in his. All right, see ya. So then I would need to get this to be what I actually want. And so note that that's not how we're going to do it. So I'm not actually sure. So. And then the rest of these, I'd basically go down one after another and just make sure it's working the way we want, which is pretty much good at this point. Except for the spacing here, which bugs me. And that's about it. So at this point, we're just a few steps away from having a manual episode class that we've mapped this thing into. And now, once you have this, first of all, you can inject it, you can type in it, you can know exactly what the shape's going to look like, but you can also add methods, or you can add fields or whatever that you wouldn't have had available elsewhere. You can add computed fields where this has a method available to us that exposes something on top of this or whatever. Who knows what ends up being. So this is a very, very helpful little change to make. So now we can actually start customizing this episode versus being restricted by whatever came in from the Vine Lab. So dt equals then. dt equals then delete until the next equal. Right. So what he's saying there is if you want to delete to the next equal in Vim, so if you do dt, well, if you do t, it moves to the next instance of thing. Or it moves one before the next instance of things. So if I hit t equals, it's going to move me to the next instance. If you hit d and then a movement, it's going to delete up till there. So if you hit dt equals, then it's going to delete to the next one. Then period. Well, period, you'd have to go to the next one, right? So it would end up being dt and then j to move down, right? So let's actually try this out. Problem is if I do dt equals, then I got an extra space, so then I would have to start one space over or something, dt equals, and then I'd have to hit j to go down, and then b, and then, you know, so I feel like there's got to be a better way, or f single quote, yeah, dt equals j, but then that gets you in the same line, and they're not in the same spot, so then you need to get back to there, and then you need to get over to, and so it's not as clean. I bet you there's a macro you could write that would do that really cleanly, but even just the dt equals and then moving around manually ends up getting me a lot better than I was, which is literally just moving keyboard around for everything. Okay, so that's it. I gotta go get some lunch before my next meeting. Thank you all for tuning in. Article mapper looks to be just a transformer. Yeah, it's a transformer, not a mapper, but whatever. It's, you know, same thing. So so what we're doing here is basically transforming it, and then so we're transforming this standard class object into this array, and then we're passing that array into the constructor as the attributes, and then we're actually manually creating an episode class from that, which gives us some power we didn't have before. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Wait, you're up there. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I did not pick my nose this time because I most of the time remembered that you all were here.